There are currently 6 head coaches that have 1 Super Bowl ring. We need to figure out who's going to get that second one. We're going to do that today here on Locked On NFL.
The barbershop is open and Tony Wiggins has a chair for you. He's ready with some real NFL talk. The local experts of Locked On bring their expertise, and Wiggy is ready with his clippers and shears. Sit down and enjoy. The new Locked On NFL starts now. Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
It is your team every day here on Locked On NFL. We thank you for making us your first listen. I am Tony Wiggins, the host of Locked On NFL, as well as the host of Locked On Jaguars, and he is Julian Council, the host of Locked On Panthers. Both of us have been covering these teams for a number of years, but we've been looking around at the entire NFL, so that's what we're here today for, to talk about the NFL as we do each and every day. Today's show obviously can be found wherever you get podcasts. Make sure you tap into the location that you always get your podcasts at, whether you watch or listen, and we will be there. What will we be doing? Talking about football. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Here's what we're going to do today, man. I got motivated by looking at the NBA playoffs, and I saw a great coach, right? Rick Carlisle, and I thought he only has 1 championship. And he has parallels because he coached in an era where they had 2 greats, and Greg Popovich and, of course, Phil Jackson. It was hard to get you one. You got you one, right? But then when those guys left, Steve Kerr and Eric Spoelstra were winning the championship. So we've seen guys in the NBA get fired after winning 1 title. It very rarely happens in the NFL. When you have a Super Bowl, you get fired. We just had a coach in Jacksonville, and Doug Peterson, that got fired from 2 places since he has been a single Super Bowl winner. So Julian and I are going to go through today with those 6 coaches, and we're going to talk about them. In the third segment, the smart money duo is what I'll call it. This is where you're going to get paid probably the most money for a team that has a good deal. The 2 you can't dismiss. There's 2 guys that can beat anybody on any given Sunday. And there's 2 guys that coach teams that will do that. And they also don't like each other very much. We'll discuss that. At the top, though, here's what we're going to do. We're going to discuss the best teams with the best shot of the 6. Julian, name those 6 coaches I'm talking about that have those 1 title. Only 6 current coaches have 1 championship.
Yeah, we got John Harbaugh down there in Baltimore. We have Nick Sirianni, who just joined us this past February up in Philadelphia. Sean McVay with the Rams. Also, we have Sean Payton with the Denver Broncos. You scroll down, Pete Carroll. I'm forgetting about that all the time this offseason. He's now with the Raiders. And then you also have, who am I missing? I'm missing one more person.
Did you say Tomlin? You said Tomlin,
yeah,
right?
Mike Tomlin, Pittsburgh Steelers, of course.
There you go. So of those 6, we have 3 segments, and we're going to put 2 coaches in each segment. Right now, best team, best shot. Yeah. I'm just going to play the clip, and you'll know who this is. This is in no specific order, but the 2 coaches that coach the teams, I believe, has the best shot to get them their 2nd Super Bowl. And here's one of them right now off the bat.
It was the smart move to build your future around Nick Sirianni as the Philadelphia Eagles head coach, because as much as I've doubted him at times, I think from an accomplishment perspective, as I said before, he's already the greatest head coach in Eagles history. And that's saying a lot considering he's only been here since 2021. I think it's one of the most underrated runs a head coach has had in the history of this league. He just does not get the credit that some of these other head coaches do, right? Even guys of his style, like a John Harbaugh, Dan Campbell, gets so much more credit than Nick Sirianni, and Sirianni's had way more success than Dan Campbell since 2021. So he's vastly underrated. I think he's the GOAT already for Eagles head coaches, and a much-deserved contract extension for the head coach.
That is Lou DiBiase for Locked On Eagles. I'm going to explain something to you before we get in the rest of this stuff. Since they won that title, that man's been on a heater. They are the best at every single thing. Everybody associated with the Philadelphia Eagles right now is not just only the best in Philadelphia history, they're the best in the National Football League. So shout out to Louis for flexing when you have a chance to win that championship. But this is just my opinion. I don't think FanDuel agrees that of all of these 6 coaches, this is the team with the best chance to win. I do.
Yeah, I mean, FanDuel has them at plus 750 right now, right with Kansas City and behind Baltimore in Buffalo. And that is really interesting to hear Louis say he's the best head coach in history of the Eagles, especially when you think back to, beginning of last season, there was the Seth Wickersham article from ESPN.com just highlighting the fracture in the relationship between Sirianni and Jalen Hurts and whether he was going to make it. There was talk last offseason about Bill Belichick going and being the head coach there in Philadelphia, just firing Sirianni after they had fallen apart at the end of that 2023 season. So, insane that we've gotten to that point where that statement's being made. But if that's how Lou feels, that's how he feels. I'm just on the outside, I would think probably still Andy Reid, even though he was able to get over the top and get that championship. And if you think about Sirianni, he could already have 2 at this point in time if he could have been able to have a defensive stop in that second half against the aforementioned Andy Reid and the Kansas City Chiefs. So, yeah, I think that he's probably going to be sticking around for a while now. It's still Philadelphia. Who knows? I know you brought up with the NBA. It's like everybody gets fired. Frank Vogel gets fired. Mike Malone gets fired. Rick Carlisle, he gets fired after a couple of years. You look at Tyronn Lue gets fired. Like the NFL, it's a little bit different, but like Doug Peterson got fired up there after a couple seasons. So it's always possible that he does not stick around long enough if they don't keep this thing rolling, which, looking at what Howie Roseman, their general manager, has done to build this team up, I don't see how that's not going to happen. But you never know. But he certainly has a great chance because he's already knocked on the door twice. The door opened once and the door slammed shut the first time. But no reason not to believe they're not going to still be right up there in the hunt every year.
I'm going to just play the clip and tell you who I got in this category as best team with best shot. This is coaches who coach teams. Coaches who have won 1 Super Bowl trying to get Super Bowl number 2. Check this clip out.
Sean McVay is really good at, for lack of a better word, off-schedule things, whether it's being relocated for a playoff game because of the fires, whether it's being, in a temporary location, whatever it is. The Rams have had some weird stuff where, they're supposed to go to Mexico a few years ago. That got canceled because of a Shakira concert that went bad. And all of a sudden you've got wildfires up in Thousand Oaks and they couldn't practice, so they've had a lot of practice and a lot of repetition at doing things that, quote unquote, off schedule. The Rams have been really good on the road under Sean McVay. So I anticipate they'll be fine. I think that the Rams are set up to have a great season. And
Sean McVay is the coach that I hear a lot of times when people say outside of Andy Reid, he's the best in the NFL. I hear that all the time with Sean McVay. He got a good chance, though, because he got a real good team to get his second Super Bowl.
Yeah, but how long is he going to do this? It was only a couple years ago after he won his first Super Bowl in that first year of Matthew Stafford after that blockbuster trade, which we didn't realize was a blockbuster trade between Detroit and Los Angeles back then, that there's talk about him retiring, that his now wife was wanting him to be at home more, than maybe he was going to be on TV. So that's the question with Sean McVay, because he's still young. Like, how old is he right now? Is he even 40? He's got to be 40 at this point in time. But no, he's not. He's 39. So, oh my God, he doesn't turn 40 until next January. So he's still young, and there's no way a guy that young is going to keep doing it. At least it's the NFL, so the workload's not the same. But clearly, he's one of those guys that puts a ton of hours into this, and that's how you become great. So I am curious to see how that career arc plays out. I do love the Rams this year, especially being in the NFC. Like, you look at the West, like Seattle, I don't believe in Sam Darnold, so no thanks there. The Cardinals, they're certainly more competitive, but okay. And the 49ers certainly know how to feel about that team at this point in time. So I do think the Rams should be the favorites there in the NFC West, and winning your division is such a big marker as far as having an opportunity to get to the Super Bowl. So I like what they got. Devontae Adams is there now. Maybe that's going to work out after his just kind of weird stops of the last year or so. Matthew Stafford coming back for another year. It's just a question with Sean McVay is how much longer is he going to do it? And I could see him being one of those guys who maybe hangs it up for a little bit and then comes back 5 years later, and then maybe he's right back there with another opportunity, just depending on how things play out with LA.
Yeah, I think he has a chance to be the next John Madden in TV. So talk about a dude who won 1 Super Bowl and then was better in his next career. That's who it is. I think people really like listening to McVay. All right, those are teams with 2 best shots. Now we're going to have 2 teams that don't like each other very much. That's Baltimore and Pittsburgh as our middle 2, the teams you can't dismiss. Those are the 2 of the 6 teams who are trying to get their second Super Bowl under their current coach. We'll discuss it in just a second here on Locked On NFL. Today's show is brought to you and sponsored by Game Time. There's nothing like the NBA playoffs, the intensity, the buzzer beaters, the fans losing their minds. It's the kind of atmosphere where you must experience it live. And this year's matchups, they're already delivering, man. They've been really, really good games. If you want in, Game Time makes it fast and easy to get seats, even for the biggest playoff games. Prices on the app actually drop closer to tip-off, and with killer last-minute deals, panoramic seats, and no surprise fees, Game Time is a total game changer. You want to see a buzzer-beating shot? Make sure you get your tickets from Game Time. They'll give you great seats as low as $100, and you'll get to see your seat before you purchase. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time and download the Game Time app. Create an account and use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Moving and grooving here on Locked On NFL with Julian Council, riding shotgun with your boy Tony Wiggins here. We're talking about coaches who have won one Super Bowl, trying to get their second one and what their chances are of doing that. We're just going to get right now to two teams that really don't like each other, and the team that has the odds on FanDuel, the highest odds, if you will, of winning a Super Bowl for their coach. And you'll hear here that the host of their podcast on our network believes that somebody disrespected him. Check this out.
You look at some of the names on this list, like Jim Harbaugh. Why is Jim Harbaugh on this list over John? You know, what has Jim done at the NFL level? And look, you can talk about him rebuilding a program at Michigan. I don't care about that when talking about NFL head coaches. That's a college conversation. I don't care about that. To me, Jim Harbaugh does not deserve to be on here. At least over Harbaugh. And Mike Tomlin at number 5. Isn't Mike Tomlin like the John Harbaugh of the Steelers with less playoff success? Like, isn't that exactly what, like, Tomlin and Harbaugh are two guys that won a Super Bowl way back in the day. Harbaugh and Tomlin haven't had a ton of playoff success recently. You know, the Steelers have barely had any playoff success recently. Harbaugh's had more, and it's not even close. Again, you don't even have to call John Harbaugh a top 5 head coach, right? You don't. But there are some names on this list that I severely question.
My man Kevin Oestreicher looked like he ready to fight. I mean, I'm talking about say it again. It's almost like Kevin was talking, say it again, and basically he was talking to Nick Wright. Baltimore has a very, very good team, and you can't look past them. I think when people get to the point where they say Baltimore's always going to make noise, but they ain't going to do nothing, that's when they're going to jump the boogie and bite you.
Yeah, the Jim Harbaugh hate, I don't get it. I've been like a Jim Harbaugh defender for like the last decade. I remember when he was at Michigan, everyone's like, oh my God, he's just not winning these games. He's not beating Ohio State. It's like, well, look at the history of that rivalry. Like Ohio State has always been better than Michigan. And then eventually like he got over the top and now they've won like 4 straight. Of course, he wasn't there last year. And you look at his NFL tenure in San Francisco, he missed the playoffs one time and they won 8-8 that season. He went to the Super Bowl and yes, lost to his brother John, and then he comes back in the NFL and promptly makes the playoffs. So we talk about Mike Tomlin's been coaching the NFL a lot longer and has never had a losing season. Well, Jim Harbaugh's coached less years and not had a losing season. Like for a guy to have gotten like fired and do not have a losing season, like that feels pretty rare in sports in general these days. So I do think Jim's great, but like John is also excellent. And like Lamar Jackson, like saved his career there in Baltimore, like with the whole Flacco thing at the end and Lamar coming in and then to get to the playoffs, he was cooked without Lamar. And we're still doing the whole playoff Lamar thing and whether he is able to step up when those games matter most. And I certainly think that, I guess that's a worthwhile discussion point, even though he's fantastic every year in the regular season, but you got to be able to make the big plays in the playoffs. So I still think like them compared to like Pittsburgh, far better chance because they do have a 2-time MVP, could have been 3-time MVP. If you look at this past season, doesn't really matter at this point in time. But that's what is really going to give John Harbaugh the opportunities, what Lamar Jackson's able to do once you get to January and potentially February, because that's only reason at this point in time he's still employed by Baltimore.
Man, look, I knew that I was going to find a clip of either Baltimore or Pittsburgh. When I'm talking about them, they were going to mention the other person. I had a feeling it was going to happen because it happens all the time, and it happened here. Now, Mike Tomlin's chances depend on Aaron Rodgers. Not necessarily the ability of the 41-year-old former MVP, but it's the other things. Like, can he get him to buy in, right? He's already done something that made me think Mike Tomlin has already had an effect on him. Check this out.
Aaron Rodgers is taking a legitimate mentorship role with Will Howard. Sometimes I think this whole like mentor narrative gets blown out of proportion, and sometimes people just like write stories about this guy's a mentor to this guy because they play the same position. This feels legitimate and real. Like I've been watching practice very closely, and you could see Aaron Rodgers saying like, "Hey, when you take your drops, do this," or like, "Hey, when you're doing this, do this." Like, he said his seat is right next to Will Howard in the meeting room. So, like, I think that Will Howard is can only benefit. Like, he has to be one of the happiest people that the Steelers signed Aaron Rodgers, because he's definitely reaping some of the benefits.
That's Julian, great, Will Howard.
Yeah, Julian, go ahead.
He can hold the clipboard for his entire career because he's never going to play. But
I got you. But I'm going to tell you something it says. You see Aaron Rodgers do stuff that Aaron Rodgers doesn't do, right? Aaron Rodgers, ain't nobody wasn't no mentor to him, so he wasn't one to Jordan Love, right? He ain't doing that. And now he's doing it. I got a buddy who said he'll never get married. And then he got married in his 50s. He said she was the right one. Aaron Rodgers didn't listen to nobody. He already getting off to a good start listening to Mike Tomlin. Can he get Mike Tomlin his second Super Bowl?
Yeah, speaking of getting married, he apparently got married this summer, I guess this spring, whenever, I don't know. Well, so good for him. It's interesting because, like, you look at the mentorship aspect of it. Like Jordan Love, they drafted him in the first round. He was clearly going to replace Aaron Rodgers. Like, he was a threat to him. Will Howard, 6th-round draft pick, played 5-6 years of college football. Can't really throw the ball that well. He's not a threat to Aaron Rodgers. So maybe that's the difference here. He's not really worried about this dude taking my job because that dude's never going to be a starting quarterback. But no. There's zero chance that Aaron Rodgers is going to win a Super Bowl in Pittsburgh for Mike Tomlin. Like, it's just not going to happen. Like, I don't see it. The guy we've seen recently has not been good. And I understand it's the Jets. So that's probably the biggest issue, is the stank that they put on you. But, like, no. You think about that division. Aaron's not better than Lamar right now. He's not better than Joe Burrow. The only quarterback he's better than is whoever Cleveland's trotting out there, whichever week. Because it could be, quarterback roulette there on the mistake by the lake later on this season. Who knows what's going to happen? But I don't see it. I really don't. The roster is fine, but it's not to the level where I think they can overcome what Aaron Rodgers has looked like in recent years. And if he does play better, great. It's not going to be good enough, in my opinion. So no, this is like a 1-year deal, right? So
you wouldn't even put him in. You can't dismiss him category. You are dismissing him. You wouldn't put him in the category where I put him, right?
They play in the AFC, correct?
Yeah.
So okay, I'm thinking like what AFC team?
They ain't got to beat everybody, because some of these people beat themselves. They got to win one game sometimes.
Well, I'm guessing Pittsburgh's not going to win the division.
I got you.
Which is going to probably put them in a position where if they win their wild card game, that in the divisional round, they're going on the road to Kansas City or Buffalo.
Yeah, they got to crawl through one of those teams. They got to be Andy Dufresne and crawl through the muck to get out of Shawshank, right? No, yeah.
it's not happening. So,
by the way, you always talk about the Jets. I don't know if I ever told you this. Pete Axtell, legend. Used to be on TV, and they were doing highlights, and he got to the Jets. Every time you say it's the Jets, I think about this, so I thought I'd tell you, Julian. He was time to do Jets highlight, and he goes, now the big green fungus in New York. Oh, my God. I said, I got to tell Julian, because Julian would absolutely go, I know why he said it, man. Nobody gets on the Jets like Julian. All right, smart money duo. We're going to talk about two teams that are in the same division that both have coaches who have won Super Bowls, looking for their third Super Bowl. Pete Carroll is one, and Sean Payton is the other. The difference in this last category is this. If they win it, one of them will be the first coach to win a second Super Bowl with a second team. We'll discuss that in just a second here on Locked On NFL. All right, Julian, third final segment here with Julian Council, talking about Super Bowl winning coaches with one title that have a chance to win their second Super Bowl. There are currently 6 right now in the National Football League. The last 2, we've talked about best team, best shot, had a little disagreement, but we're in the same area. The 2 you can't dismiss, Pittsburgh and Baltimore. The 2 at the top, of course, Rams and the Eagles, the current Super Bowl champions. Now we get to these 2 teams, the Denver Broncos and the Las Vegas Raiders. No clip for the Raiders. We don't talk about the Raiders, though. Let's go with Pete Carroll. We were just talking about what did Jim Harbaugh do? Well, he ran Pete Carroll out of USC. That's what he did with a whole bunch of smart people up in Palo Alto and Stanford. And then he chased him, but didn't quite catch him when he got to the National Football League. But he did end the Legion of Boom's run, I believe, to be dominating everything, even though when the 49ers did get to the Super Bowl, they did not win. Pete Carroll's a good coach. He's a good coach. He's a good coach with a good GM. The thing you have to answer for yourself, though, is can a coach win? Mike Holmgren tried with Seattle. Can a coach win a Super Bowl without being with the team that he won his first Super Bowl with? He'd be the first one in history to do it. Doug Peterson came to Jacksonville, failed. After 3 years, he's gone. One of these coaches has a shot to do it. Let's start with Pete Carroll. What do you think, Pete Carroll, what his chances are of winning the Super Bowl in London?
Oh, I don't think they're very high. And that a lot of that is it's the Raiders. I mean, this isn't Al Davis, just win, baby. This is Mark Davis. What are we doing here, Raiders? That's what it is. And I mean, I look at ownership as being one of the biggest competitive advantages or disadvantages at the NFL level. If you have a good owner, you have a chance, and they do not have a good owner. And I'm just really interested just in the direction where this organization is going. I do like the fact that they got Geno Smith because they do have a quarterback. That was clearly an issue over the last couple of years where, I mean, you had Gardner Minshew in there and Alex O'Connell, and I don't really know what they were trying to accomplish with that a year ago. And Antonio Pierce, which will be one of the weirder just 1-year NFL head coaching regimes that we've seen in the last decade. I guess up there with Jim Tom Sula up in San Francisco as well. I love Pete Carroll. I mean, my formative years of watching football were when Pete Carroll was at USC and had Reggie Bush and Matt Leinart and Lindale White, and they were outstanding. And then him going to the NFL and what he was able to do in Seattle, I loved watching it from afar. Marshawn Lynch, up with the Legion of Boom, all those guys. So I'm always going to be a huge Pete Carroll fan. I don't think it's going to happen for him at this point in his career. I don't think they have the team. I don't know how much time he really is gonna, invest in. Like, is he got, like, if we're talking about 4 years, possibly max, maybe of him being in Las Vegas, and in that division, I just don't see it. That's the problem. It's like you don't have the quarterback, you don't really have that much time, and you play in that division. So yeah.
Yeah, and 2 of the coaches that we're talking about here are in that division with him. We mentioned Jim Harbaugh in a roundabout way. He's not on this list, but we think highly of him, right? Well, we got one more, and I ain't even mentioned Andy Reid because he's 3 times too qualified to be in this category. So a lot of stuff, a lot of layers to peel back. Let's talk about Sean Payton, because Sean Payton now, you want to talk about, if I had to place a bet on the guy who would win his second Super Bowl with his second team, Sean Payton got that thing looking good. And he plays in that same division, but I'm telling you, man, there is something about him. He has this mix of old school, but he's smart enough to understand the new school, and he got that team to overachieve. Listen to what he's doing this year in the offseason.
But I think it starts in training camp. And one thing we know is Sean's training camp practices, I've talked to a handful of players about it. They say it's the hardest training camp that they've ever been in their entire lives. But on the flip side of that, they also said you see the reward. There's some veteran guys that have been on this team for quite some time that were a little opposed to it at first when Sean came in. But then you start to see the results. They started saying, like, okay, hey, we understand this. We have our goals, and this is the way that we're going to get there.
The first step in any new situation is buy-in, and it seems like Sean Payton has done that right away.
Yeah, no, he's got the buy-in. It's just, does he have a good enough roster? Because that's the thing in that division. Can you overcome Mahomes? Because we talked about it all last year. The Chiefs kept getting away with it until they couldn't against Philadelphia, and they got waxed in the Super Bowl. And I mean, Denver had nothing for them. I mean, they had them in one of those games. They had them, but they didn't win. And then, LA, same thing. Well, Vegas had nothing really for them either. But it's just like, you have to build a roster where you are so much better in the trenches than Kansas City, who has gone out this offseason and fixed the offensive line again. And you have to be so much better than them on the defensive line. And you have to be better with skill position. You have to have so much around. And I just don't see it with Denver. And Sean Payton, obviously a good coach. I don't know. I don't know how he's going to be able to do it there. And it's not just you get past Kansas City, is that there's still Cincinnati with Joe Burrow. There's Lamar Jackson in Baltimore. There's Josh Allen up in Buffalo. There's just so much you have to overcome in the AFC. And I don't think that he's going to be able to do it. Like, the fact he's got this team as a playoff team in his second year, that Bo Nix looked as good as he did last year. Like, I feel like the Broncos ceiling, while he's going to be there, is going to be like winning 11 games and maybe getting to the divisional round. I just don't think that they're going to be able to accomplish anything more than that, just based off of like the 7 years of evidence that ain't nobody beating Kansas City until you get to the title game.
He would be immortalized if he won it in Denver for more than one reason. First of all, he'd be the first person to win it in two different places, right? That would be one thing. But what would be intriguing for me, and something that we can watch out for with that, is this: he would have won it a different way. In New Orleans, they were all about the city. Post Katrina, they were lighting it up on offense and they swarmed on defense, right? But they swarmed on defense because you knew you had to keep up with them. You couldn't, similar to Kansas City, you don't go in there shooting field goals, man, because eventually you got to score touchdowns to beat them. So they could always play a brand of defense where they could just pin their ears back because their offense was so good. If he wins it in Denver, while I don't think that the offense is going to they're not going to be stagnant, but I think they're going to win it with physicality. They're going to win it with defense, and they're going to win it trying to win it running the football. They just used the first round pick on the running back, right? And I think that's what they're going to do and get their play action going because let's just face it, as much as we like Bo Nix, he ain't Drew Brees. To win it in different fashions, I think would be one of the most impressive things, especially for a guy like Peyton, and would put him in that next tier. Not Belichick, not Andy Reid, Don Shula, and all of those guys.
Yeah.
But it will put him in a special category as a dude. He will probably be known as a guy who knows how to fix stuff, and he'll do it whatever way it takes to win games.
Yeah, and probably if we look at just the Hall of Fame, you get that second Super Bowl, you accomplish it in the second spot, and all that he did later on in New Orleans after they had, I think it was like 3 straight years of going 7-9, and then they won the NFC South back to back to, I think, 4 straight years. And there was that one year where, there was a lot of talk about the Saints having a chance to win it. And then Kirk Cousins in Minnesota goes down there and beats them late in that game. And that was really like the end of the Sean Payton era in New Orleans. But like, you look at what he did down there. And if he's able to do it in Denver, which, we have seen, like, Denver has had plenty of good teams that have been able to win Super Bowls. And that has been a proud fan base since, they lost, I guess, who's their coach back when they won in 2015?
Kubiak.
Kubiak, yeah. It's Gary Kubiak. Like, it's been
John Fox or somebody. Yeah, no, John Fox.
Beat Fox is there, then Kubiak came in and was able to get them over the top. And then after that, Vance Joseph and then Vic Fangio. Fangio said I never had a quarterback, which is true. Things just weren't great for them. And now it's like, okay, here you can see it happening potentially as far as like with Peyton compared to those other guys. But I just still think that it's just going to be a lot to do. And if he does it, then go ahead and get that brass bust in Canton ready to go.
Yeah. And by the way, for housekeeping purposes, I almost added Todd Bowles to this list, and Julian had to remind me Bowles wasn't the head coach when Tampa won that Super Bowl. Bruce Arians was. And then Bowles, they want to fire Bowles because he ain't been able to keep that thing going down there in Tampa. But
they win the division every year.
Yeah, for the record, I do think Tampa, if he had won one, might be the dude that's most likely to do it on this list because Tampa has a real good team coming up this year. Julian Council and I had fun with this today. If you want to have more fun, make sure you tap into Locked On NFL Scouting with Kyle Krabs and Joe Marino. They will make you smarter as an NFL fan. It will help you also in your fantasy build up for this year. And it'll just give you something that keeps your mind focused on football as we approach training camp. Make sure you tap into Locked On NFL Scouting wherever you get your podcast. It's been fun. Hopefully, Julian and I, one day, our teams that we cover every day will win a Super Bowl. We'll be talking about our coaches like this. But until that happens, we just going to keep on keeping on. Y'all, thank y'all for joining us for 30 minutes here on Locked On NFL. We'll be back at it tomorrow morning, starting with Tyler Rowland, the Madman, and then I'll be back here in the barbershop in the afternoon. We'll see you next time on Locked On NFL.